Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on earth. As always, I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're going to be talking about Darla Dudley of the Marvel family, who was played by my wife's cousin Jessie. She also plays Nubia in our game world. And when I did the Nubia video last month, it set the record for the amount of hate mail I have ever received for a game. The first message I received was from a guy who seemed to be a white supremacist who was mad that I had included Nubia in my game world. And the second message that I received was from an African American woman who was angry that I'd included Nubia in my game world. So that was interesting. Nubia was played by Jesse, who is African American. Jesse's mom and dad are both African American, and my wife is mixed race. She's part black and part Asian. Not that anybody cares, but I'm totally Irish as near as I can tell. And in my opinion, none of that matters when it comes to a role playing game. Even though Jesse does tend to play black women in our game, if she asked to play Supergirl or Batgirl or something like that, I wouldn't tell her, no, sorry, you're not allowed. But to my surprise, I received quite a few messages last month suggesting that that's how I should do things. My response to that is an old military saying: never give an order you can't enforce. In other words, don't tell me how to run my game because there's a really good chance I won't bow down to anybody else's demands. When my son was in junior high, his best friend was black, and he'd spend the night or stay over at our house over the weekend, and we'd all play DC Heroes together sometimes. And never in a million years would I ever tell that kid he wasn't allowed to do something because of the color of his skin. That mentality actually really pisses me off. When I was a kid, my dad abandoned my mom and I, and it was a different time back then. I lived in a very small town in rural Ohio, and I was the only kid at my school who didn't have a dad. And everybody, I don't just mean the other kids, the teachers, the other adults in the community, everybody treated me like crap because I was a quote unquote bastard, right? And my long-winded point is that from a very young age, I learned that it is evil to mistreat a person for anything that they did not choose for themselves, period. So the same applies to whether or not you have a dad, or whether you're black or white, or whether you're male or female, no matter what it is, right? At any rate, I'm sure that somebody out there is going to be angry that we are telling another story about a woman of color. And to that person, just know that I do not care how you feel. Like I always say, if I'm eating a delicious steak and the person next to me says that steak sucks, do you know how much that opinion affects how my taste buds work? 0%, right? So, all that said, I'm going to put away my soapbox now. And and I will say this, for every one listener who's a troll, there seem to be 100 listeners who are awesome. So to you guys, thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys. Having said all that, let's dive in. The prologue to this one starts in 1940 when Billy Batson became the original Captain Marvel. Soon after, the wizard Shazam started granting these powers to others, like Billy's twin sister Mary, who became Mary Marvel. The janitor at Billy's elementary school was even given powers, and he became Uncle Marvel. Billy was an orphan, and at the orphanage, he met a little girl named Darla. And to make a long story short, she was adopted by Uncle Marvel. While many people saw Uncle Marvel as a laughing stock or an overweight joke, he was actually an ideal father. During World War II, the Marvel family fought evil overseas, and a German soldier copied their powers, becoming the supervillain known as Blitzkrieg. In 1945, Blitzkrieg had gained the upper hand. He created a zone of silence in which none of the kids could say the word Shazam. In their powerless state, they were helpless to defend themselves against Blitzkrieg. So Uncle Marvel, aka Dudley H. Dudley, picked up a piece of scrap metal and pointed it at the machine that had created this zone. and he stood between Blitzkrieg and the kids. Blitzkrieg hit Uncle Marvel with all of his lightning, and on that day, Uncle Marvel gave his life for those kids. Dudley died, but the electricity arced off that scrap metal, hitting that force field generator, disabling it, and the kids all screamed the word Shazam. With the zone destroyed, the Marvel family defeated Blitzkrieg, and after the war, Uncle Marvel was buried in Arlington National Cemetery and given a hero's funeral. Also, at the end of World War II, Superman Red fought the evil leader of Germany himself, who had in his possession a duplicator ray. Superman Red was swarmed by tons of the German leader's evil duplicates, and in the end, they were defeated. But now there were also tons of Superman Red duplicates as well. About 10 years later, one of the Superman Red duplicates ran into Darla Dudley in Philadelphia when she was in her 20s. They dated for a while, then married in 1955. In March of 1956, Darla gave birth to a beautiful baby boy who the happy couple agreed to name Dudley, after Darla's father, the man who saved her life all those years ago. And that brings us to the main plot of today's game. Darla, her husband, John Redbridge, and their baby, Dudley, are in Fairmount Park in Philadelphia when Albrecht Krieger, his brother, Wolf Krieger, and the supervillain known as Blitzkrieg show up. Blitzkrieg hates the Marvel family and blames all of them for his imprisonment. Albrecht and Wolf hate John because they think he killed the Fuhrer and cost them the war. And they all hate that these two are married. So we roll initiative, and John is fastest. As an automatic action, he tells his wife to take the baby and run. For his second automatic action, he flies into the thick of it. And for his dice action, he multi-attacks the supervillains and pushes the attack using 30 APs of heat vision. He needs an 11 or better to push the attack, and he rolls a 9 and a 4. So that gives him 1 column shift. So for this round, his heat vision goes from being in the 28 to 30 range to the 31 to 35 range. Now he needs a 13 or better to hit all 3 villains using the multi-attack rules. And he rolls double 5s, which is a critical success. By the way, there were a ton of critical successes in this game. It was impressive. At any rate, then he rolls again, and he gets an 8 and a 10 on his second roll for a grand total of 28. So the villains all take 20 points of damage and have 8 hit points each. On Darla's turn, she says Shazam, transforming into her alter ego. By the way, at this point in her life, she looks like she's the same age in both forms. Kind of like how in Kingdom Come, Billy Batson grew up to look like Shazam, right? So at any rate, she spends her remaining actions flying away with the baby. As she takes him towards their babysitter, who is a gentle anthropomorphic tiger named Talkie Tawny, it is now the villain's turn to attack. And since it's 3-on-1, they get a team attack bonus versus John. So while they normally need a 9 or better to hit the hero, now they only need a 5 or better to hit him. So Albrecht Krieger goes first, rolling a 9 and a 7, earning 2 column shifts more damage. So John's body drops from 40 to 33. Next up is Wolf Krieger, who rolls double 10s, then a 5 and an 8 for a grand total of 33, which is 7 column shifts. John's body drops from 33 to 16. Finally, Blitzkrieg rolls a 1 and an 8, which does hit, but isn't enough to do damage. Meanwhile, Darla, who is as fast as Mercury, gets the baby to Talkie Tawny, then she hurries back towards the fight. That's her whole turn. So now it's John's turn again. He decides to focus on Blitzkrieg, and that is his attempt to avenge Uncle Dudley. the man that his baby was named after. So John rolls a 9 and a 4, which is exactly what he needs to hit. Then it's his strength of 50 versus Blitzkrieg's body of 28. Blitzkrieg takes 22 points of damage. And then John hits him with his left, doing another 22 points of damage, knocking him out. So Blitzkrieg might be out of the fight, but now it's the Krieger brothers' turn to attack. Albrecht rolls a 1 and an 8, which hits, but does no damage. Wolf Krieger then goes, rolling double 9s, then an 8 and a 6 for a grand total of 32, which is 7 column shifts, which does 17 points of damage. John's body drops to 0, and the hero is knocked out. So he falls out of the sky and lands in the grass of Fairmount Park. Darla returns, and she sees that her husband has been beaten until he lost consciousness. She also sees that these two German war criminals are going to try to beat him to death. So she multi-attacks both of them, rolling a 9 and a 7. So she hits with no column shifts, and both men take an additional 7 points of damage. So both of their bodies were at level 8. They both drop to 1. Then Albrecht Krieger attacks Darla and rolls double 8s. Then he rolls a 9 and a 4 for a grand total of 29, which is 6 column shifts. Darla's body drops from 28 to 9. Then he goes again, subbing his automatic actions for another dice action. And this time he rolls a 7 and a 6, and Darla's body drops to 0. So she too falls out of the sky and lands next to her husband in the grass. Wolf Krieger then spends an automatic action getting down there, and then for his dice action, he kicks Darla's body, doing another 7 points of damage. Now she's at -7. If they take her down to -28, she will be dead. Meanwhile, at the home of Talkie Tawny, baby Dudley says his first word, and it is Shazam. The baby is struck by lightning and transforms into his alter ego, which is an adult version of himself, wearing a Captain Marvel-style costume. But he also has some blue trim on there in honor of his dad's costume. And that said, he uses the speed of Mercury and the wisdom of Solomon, and he flies to where the villains are, and he attacks them. He punches Wolf first, rolling a 6 and a 10, hitting him. Wolf had 1 hit point left, so he's knocked out. And then Albrecht Krieger attacks Dudley and rolls a 5 and an 8, which hits. And Dudley's body goes down from 34 to 27. On Dudley's turn, he rolls a 7 and a 6, hitting and knocking out Albrecht Krieger. And as he does this, he spends an automatic action to say, "That's for Mom and Dad." Which brings us to our epilogue. Dudley wakes up his mom and dad, who are battered, but they're going to be okay. And to say the least, they are shocked to meet the man their baby boy is destined to grow up to be. John jokes that normally he would say that he's sad he wasn't there to hear his son's first words, but had he not said the word, they might not be here otherwise. Dudley promises that now that he can say the word, he can transform back whenever he wants. But now that the fighting is over, he says Shazam again, and once again is transformed into a baby. John Redbridge then seeks out Superman Blue, Clark Kent, and together they place those villains in the Phantom Zone. And that was it for that game session. We enjoyed playing it. We hope you enjoyed hearing about it. If so, smash that like button, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment, as that really helps us out on our end. From all of us here at the longest running superhero RPG on Earth, we hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you in the next one.